Good evening and welcome to the CBS Miami special. I'm Jim DeFede and we are here in Surfside at the site of where the Champlain Towers South fell. June 24th marked the first anniversary of the building collapse, and naturally the day was one designed to honor the memories of the 98 people who died. After all, theirs were the lives pointlessly cut short, the never-ending promise in the eyes of a 5-year-old boy just beginning to see the world around him, the 21-year-old with so much natural ability and boundless potential, his future seemed limitless, the young newlyweds, deeply in love and eager to start a family of their own, the grandmother, around whom her entire family revolved, the thought of her death so unimaginable they had never even discussed it. Those heart-shattering stories could fill a bottomless well as each of the 98 souls lost that day become a picture frozen in time, never aging, never changing. But what of the loved ones left behind? When the eulogies and funerals are over, when the attention eventually fades and they are left with the feeling of emptiness, where do they turn? What has the past 12 months been like for them, dealing with the pain, the anger, the sorrow? How do they move on? Can they move on? Will they survive? How hard has this last year been?
I don't even know how to start describing it.
A never-ending nightmare. Sometimes you just have to slap yourself to see if this is reality.
It's been the hardest year of my life.
It's been a shock. It's been devastating. It's been lonely. It's hard. It's hard to not have your best friend and champion, holding your hand through life.
You ask every day why this happened to me, why we did wrong, why we could have done differently.
I cannot think about the future, and that's why I'm so focused in the present. I cannot plan my future. I can't plan.
For many of these families, there is a life before the collapse and there is their life after the collapse. Tonight, we examine what this year has been like for them.
People think that with time it gets easier. For me personally, it's getting harder.
In the years since the collapse, the Surfside families have each grappled with the deaths of their loved ones. Some have sought professional counseling or spiritual guidance, while others are going it alone. They may share the road they now find themselves on, but each move along it in their own way, and ultimately alone.
And no one is at the end of this journey in our family.
We're close to it.
It's important to remember that it's not just the birthdays and holidays that evoke pain, but also the loss of seemingly small moments and quiet routines that become impossible to replace.
Every day of his life, he would wake up at 6 by himself. He would come to our bed. We would watch the sunrise together because my bed was exactly on the east window.
Raquel Oliveira lost her husband, Alfredo, and her 5-year-old son, Lorenzo.
He would ask for a sandwich hug where I was the meat and they were the bread.
Now she starts each day alone and thinks back on that morning when her family was together for the last time. It was Wednesday, June 23rd, and she was flying from Miami to Denver to visit her ailing mother. She expected to see Lorenzo before leaving for the airport.
But that day he didn't wake up at 6. I went back to his room when it was time to leave. I gave him a kiss.
The plan was for Alfredo and Lorenzo to join her in Colorado in just 2 days when Lorenzo's summer camp ended. So she was surprised by how tight Alfredo embraced her at the door when they said goodbye.
And it was just a very tight hug, silent hug. And I felt like our heartbeats sink. And I just left without saying a word. I just opened the door and I didn't look back. And because I was emotional with that hug and I was crying and I didn't want him to see me cry or to think that I was sad because I was not sad. And I just left without looking back.
That night in Colorado, before going to sleep, Raquel received a text from her husband.
Alfredo sent me a picture of him and Lorenzo on the sofa watching a cartoon together. And that was the last thing, the last message we exchanged.
It's not a very good picture. You can't see Lorenzo's face, just his dark curly hair resting on his father's chest. She smiled when she saw the image and turned in for the night.
So I woke up at 4 a.m. with my phone ringing. I just opened the phone and I saw a bunch of messages asking me if I was okay. And another call came up. It was this friend again. And I asked, what's going on? That everybody's calling me, what happened? And she said, well, your building, it looks like part of your building collapsed. And I said, what's going on? What do you mean it collapsed? And she said, yeah, don't be nervous. And the first thing that came to my mind was, where is my son? And she said that I shouldn't panic, that they removed some people from the building. I started calling all the hospitals, the community center. It was a nightmare. But nobody had any news. Everything was really messed up. So I took the first flight back to Miami.
When she landed, she went straight to the Surfside Community Center where families of the missing were waiting. Almost immediately, police asked her to provide a DNA sample to help identify her son when they found him.
It was awful.
She began attending the daily briefings by police and fire officials for the families.
The briefings were very messy. All the families had very different emotions. Some were sad, some were angry. There were a lot of fights. But I remember very well the day that they announced that they would stop looking for people alive. And I remember the silence in the room. Nobody was fighting anymore. And it was this huge silence. And honestly, it's very weird, but I never expected to find them alive after I saw one picture of the collapse. I knew it was impossible, and I felt very guilty that I was not there removing, the crumbles and trying to do everything to get my son and my partner back. But I had no hope to find them alive after what I saw.
More than 2 weeks after the collapse, search teams found Alfredo and Lorenzo, father and son, side by side, together in the rubble. When we met for an interview in late May, Raquel had just arrived back in Miami after spending time with her family and friends in Colorado and Brazil, as well as visiting Alfredo's family in Italy. The timing of our interview was an emotional one. What was yesterday?
Yesterday was my anniversary with Alfredo. We would be 9 years together.
And what's tomorrow?
Tomorrow is Lorenzo's birthday.
He would turn 6.
He would turn 6, yeah. I wear this that says strong for Alfredo and strong for Lorenzo, and I try to keep strong with the good memories that I have. But when I think of Lorenzo's birthday tomorrow, I feel very angry. Because I lived only 5 years with my son. We dedicated every day of our lives since he was born, actually since pregnancy, to him. We studied, we researched, we reflected, we discussed how to be good parents, how to raise a great child, a great man, a great citizen. Lorenzo was extremely healthy, happy, smart, loving. And the fact that I cannot celebrate his birthday with him tomorrow really makes me very angry. Very angry. It's the only thing that makes me really angry.
Who are you angry at?
I don't know who I am angry at because I don't know who to blame. I don't have those answers yet. I hope I do have one day. And I cannot assume anything, but I am very angry for not being able to hold my son tomorrow and to celebrate his life with him alive.
Anger is a common emotion. We saw in the days immediately following the collapse as families waited for news.
I understand the emotions, but let's get the questions answered. So
That anger remains, fueled in part by the lack of answers as to why the building collapsed. Federal investigators recently told the families they may not issue a report on the cause of the collapse for another 2 years.
We need answers. We need closure. The families need to be respected. In the name and honor of the countless individuals who died in their own homes, we need answers. How long is it going to take?
Every morning, I say why. It's a nightmare that it never ends.
But is there any answer that they can give you that would bring you any peace?
Not really. The only thing that I'm hearing is under investigation. I called the state attorney, it's under investigation. I called the police department, it's under investigation. I called NIST, it's under investigation. I called corruption unit from the Miami Police Department, it's under investigation. I understand it's under investigation, I get that, but I need answers.
It's clear to me this was not an act of God. This was human incompetence and negligence. How many mistakes can we go through that 98 lives, paid for it? To maybe the world, 98 is nothing. My son was one of those 98.
Every family member plays out that last day before the collapse in their minds and wonders if they could have altered the fate of their loved ones. Carlos and Ronit Nebreyev are no different. Their son Elon was home from Chicago and would be attending a friend's funeral on the 24th. Rather than staying the night before the funeral with his parents in Weston, he decided to stay with his girlfriend Deborah, whose family owns several condos in the Champlain Towers. She's haunted by the call she never made.
I remember I was lying in bed. My husband was walking out to the pool area and he said, "Tell Elon that he should stay home. He shouldn't go and spend the night there. They can stay here. They've always stayed here. They can stay at home." And I thought to myself, this is a battle I'm going to do with a 21-year-old and tell him, and he's going to do what he wants anyway, and I'm going to tell him, and then he's going to be aggravated at me. And just that process, I was like, this isn't a battle I'm going to choose. So we both feel that guilty. He didn't say anything, and I was like, I'm not going to choose that battle. So we allowed him to go to his death.
This was the last image they have from their son. He took this selfie with Deborah as they were riding up the elevator of the building just hours before it collapsed. You play the what if. What if I had done this? What if I had done that?
Constantly.
By all outward appearances, they seem to be handling the last year as well as any of the families. But the truth is far more complex. The two of you seem to be, and I don't know, but I'm going to say you're an incredible team. And to what extent, there must be days where you are in a dark place and you help her, or he's in a dark place and you help him?
Before she answers, I would say that all my days are dark. I don't want to say I don't care how she is, but all my days are dark.
So his days are dark, it's true. I come from a family where, I don't know if it's that German piece, emotions weren't made to be public. So I keep to myself my emotions. I don't share them. And when I say I don't share them, I don't just mean publicly, I'm very closed in what I'm feeling.
Even to him?
Even to him. If I fall apart, I can assure you that my entire home and family falls apart.
That's an incredible amount of pressure you put on yourself then, to hold it together. I mean, you're allowed to be vulnerable.
Correct, but I've already lost one of my limbs. You know, we're a family of 5. I've lost one of my limbs. I can't afford to lose the rest. And again, if I fall apart, everybody else falls apart. So I'm not willing to lose anything else.
Do you go to counseling?
We do it together.
You do it together.
Yes.
Has that helped?
Nothing will fix this loss. Nothing will fix this loss. I think we're going through the motions of what we're told we're supposed to do. And I think that at least our therapy is to be able to respect and understand the other's grief. As my husband shared, you know, he's in a dark space and I'm carrying a different weight. So it's just understanding and respecting each other's way of moving forward.
Did this almost cost you your marriage?
We're very, very tight and united. It has not cost us our marriage yet. That's why we do therapy together.
You worry about that?
I do. I do worry about that.
It's at this point in our interview that Carlos reveals his own fear, that the grief Ronit has felt could cause her to harm herself. The fact that you think about that, the fact that you worry about that.
But she knows I'm worried because she knows that I know her and vice versa.
So it's not, I don't want to use the word killing myself. I can tell you that I drive to Aventura every day, and many times I've just thought of what happens if I just smash the car into the, you know, the side, the median of the freeway. Has it crossed my mind? Several times.
And what do you think keeps you from doing it?
My husband and my children.
Ronit is not alone in having those feelings. Counselors who have worked with many of the Surfside families say they have dealt with instances where family members simply didn't want to go on.
It's very normal after going through an experience like this for individuals to really struggle with anxiety, depression, and, you know, on the more severe end, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a common reaction when somebody's been through an event like this.
Heather Winters and Sandy Allah are with Jewish Community Services, which has been providing counseling and other services to more than 150 families affected by the collapse.
How are you coping? How can I help provide some better coping skills? Or are you using any of those things? So I think at that moment, who's working with that person or talking to or engaged with needs to see what makes sense for that individual.
It's not helpful to tell an individual how to grieve. That's such a unique experience that, you know, they determine how they grieve.
During our interview with Carlos and Ronit, Carlos moved closer to his wife as the two of them locked hands. Just want to note that throughout the interview, he moved closer and closer to you the entire time.
You asked specific questions and I answered them very candidly. I know that my husband, I'm going to answer for him. I know that he needs me, and I know that if I weren't here today, he would just disintegrate. I do know that. He won't say it. He says it to me in private, that the only reason he's here is because of me. He has a hard time saying it on camera. I'm absolutely fine. I know the truth.
I do believe that they love each other.
Tali Nabreev was Elon's sister. We spoke to her from Africa, where she's been living for the past few months.
I needed to get away from Florida. I needed to get away from it all. It's just too traumatic. I mean, there's traumatic memories everywhere you go in Florida, and you know, you get those looks of pity. I mean, you get all these other triggers, small things that you never thought would trigger you. And again, I am not familiar to the world of triggers, of trauma, of baggage. Like I had such a happy life. And so it's all new for me, and that's why I came out here. So it was a bit of a reset.
Tali recalls her mother waking her up that morning with news of the collapse.
I still can see my mom's silhouette standing in the door frame. It was pitch dark. It was 5 a.m. or so. And she was standing there, and she said, she didn't say, "Good morning, wake up." She didn't say anything. She just said the building Ilan was in collapsed. And I think I let out a scream, and my mom said, I don't need that right now. Like we can't do that right now.
They drove to Surfside just as the sun was coming up and were overwhelmed by the chaotic scene. Here you can even see Carlos yelling at the county mayor.
Nobody's there. I was there. There's not one person there.
That teams are searching under the rubble. You can't see them on the top because they are under the rubble.
When they started asking for family members to donate DNA samples, my mom went into the room to give a DNA sample to see if they could match it with any of the DNA samples they had been collecting from the site. And I completely fainted. I have never fainted before, and my body just turned off.
This photo captured that moment as paramedics treated her at the site. That pain, so clear on her face, has not lessened with time for her family.
You know, my dad only has dark days, and he doesn't keep them to himself. You know, so he'll walk around the house and put his head down and say, how could this happen to us? And so for my mom, that's very, very hard because she does try to keep it together. I mean, even if you had one moment of peace, and when you're in a house with so much sadness and trauma, it's very difficult. And so, yes, it was very hard to see my parents that way. We haven't had a family crying session. We haven't had that. When I was home, if I wanted to cry, I would go into the bathroom, turn on the shower, and cry there, because I didn't think it was fair for my parents to see their other children so broken, you know. So it's not something that I want them to see. They have enough pain of their own, and so we try not to cry in front of them. And I know my mom also tries to be strong for us as well, and my dad as much as he can.
But if you can't cry in front of them, who can you cry in front of?
Great question.
Tally started seeing a counselor a few months after the collapse.
A lot of it was initially just about the trauma. You know, it's almost like I have PTSD from an event that I wasn't at, which is a very strange thing to have. I would wake up in the middle of the night terrified that my building that I was in was collapsing. I would hear noise and I would run to the staircase. Still to this day, I hear an alarm. Even a few weeks ago, I was in the office here in Namibia, and the fire alarm went off, and I bolted. I went straight outside, and there were people going into the building, and I was like, what do you mean you're going into the building? There's an alarm. So there's definitely a lot of trauma there to work through.
When we come back, grief turns to loneliness for some families.
It's very hard, very hard. I struggle every day. And I don't think that's anything that anybody actually talks about, is the loneliness. Because we were best friends.
A little after 6 a.m. on the morning of June 24th, Rachel Spiegel arrived at the site of the Champlain Towers South collapse.
How can I get a message to them to look for my mom in 603? Here's what... It doesn't look like she's... The building, it looks like her line is down.
Judy Spiegel was home alone when the building fell. Overcome with emotion, Rachel collapses sobbing into the arms of the officer.
Are they able to pull anybody out?
They're working on it. They're working on it. Always have hope, okay?
I'm trying. You know, my dad's on his way, my brothers.
Kevin Spiegel was in California on business the day of the collapse.
I woke up in the middle of the night. I don't know what woke me up, but I woke up and I went to my cell phone. If you live in Surfside, you subscribe to the police memos that if there's anything, and they sent out an email that there was an incident and When I opened up the email and I looked at the picture, I knew where our apartment was, and I knew that was gone.
We first met the Spiegels the day of the collapse as the family held on to hope. They were incredibly open with their pain, allowing CBS News to follow them when Kevin first saw the collapse site.
Yeah, you see it?
Oh my God. You're out. She's okay. She's okay.
I want my mommy.
Yeah. She's gonna be okay. She's there. We gotta get her out.
Judy's body was recovered almost 3 weeks after the collapse.
I never talked to my mom about death. I never talked to her about not being here. I just never envisioned anything to be like this. So it's been a shock. It's been devastating. It's been lonely. It's hard. It's hard to not have your best friend and champion, holding your hand through life.
Yeah, they would talk 3 or 4 times a day.
No one can fill that void.
We are a very close family. Judy was the center of our family and really kept us together. And that legacy is about togetherness, of how we interact and support each other in good times and not so good times. She was the glue with our family. It was unbelievable.
Some families feel guilt, that they survived while loved ones passed. Did you ever feel that?
No. I personally, no.
You don't feel
would
survivor's guilt?
No. I would change my life with hers in an instant if I could. But I don't feel bad that I'm alive.
You never had a thought that I should have been there with her?
No.
No, you did. You did. You said if I was there, I would have saved her.
Oh, yeah. Because I am a survivor, and I'll do whatever it takes and mobile, and if I heard cracking or something, I would have helped her escape and get out there. And maybe that was unrealistic because how quickly the building fell.
I probably felt the guilt more. So, my mom was supposed to come over that next day. We had ballet class, and, I had a lot going on that Wednesday night, and I was very stressed. And I should have just said to my mom, don't wait till the morning to come, just come now and just sleep over. Mm-hmm. And I wish I could go back in time and just say, come over.
For Kevin, the feeling that plagues him is loneliness.
I don't know what it is to go to sleep at night with no one in the bed with you, and to wake up and not have anybody there. It's very hard, very hard. I struggle every day. And I don't think that's anything that anybody actually talks about, is the loneliness. Because we were best friends.
Over the past year, he has busied himself with work as a hospital administrator. But no matter how many hours a day he keeps his mind busy, there will always come that moment late at night.
I don't know if anybody really truly talks about it, that when you close that door at night and you're all by yourself. When I was traveling in this last year, we would talk. I would lie in bed and just talk to her, and I'd be fine. But now I have no one to call and talk to, and the loneliness is incredible.
His saving grace, his family.
Hi, girls.
Hey, Sloanie.
As we talk, Rachel's 2 daughters come home, Scarlett, who is 5, and Sloan, who just turned 3. It is Sloan who jumps into her grandfather's arms.
Say hi.
Come on, you can come here.
So I'll tell you what I liked most about my parents' relationship. I've never seen a marriage as strong as theirs. I really don't know anybody that has a bond like them. They would be walking down the street and would always be holding hands, like always. They would grab each other's hands. They were very affectionate with one another. And they had this unconditional love that was really indescribable. And I really, really admired that about my parents. I was proud of them. I just never envisioned my dad to be a widow. And I never envisioned a life where they weren't together tackling life as partners.
Scarlett comes in to take her little sister away.
She was on.
Okay. Bye, girls.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Both Rachel and Kevin are worried what the loss of her grandmother will have on Scarlett.
I think the hardest is actually Scarlett, because Scarlett was there every day.
She loved my mom.
Yeah.
She lost her best friend, like us.
What are we doing?
We're putting our heads together.
Thumbs up?
Yeah.
It was all about the kids.
Yeah, and I remember, coming in here and say, you want to sleep over at Grandma's? And she wouldn't say yes or no. She would actually run
to her room.
Run to her room to get her suitcase.
And pack her suitcase. She wanted to go. She's
That's
like,
all
bye.
she wanted to do.
Rachel also worries that Sloan is so young, she will have virtually no memories of Judy.
It's very hard for us, but I am not going, even if he's uncomfortable and anybody else, I have to keep talking about her.
Yeah.
We have to, because we need to keep her memories, alive and strong.
Why do you think it's harder for you to have those conversations?
I don't know. It just is. Maybe because I'm a guy. It's just harder. I mean, but I think out of everybody, I think Scarlett is struggling with this more than ever. And then when she sees me, she thinks about Judy, and it's not the greatest.
Well, there's two things I want to say just about Scarlett, or about all of this. But one is that, my dad's mom, my grandma, turned 90 last week. And she came over for her birthday. She lives in Miami. And, Scarlett said to me, the first thing she said to me is, how come Gigi's turning 90 and grandma was younger than her and died? Or she said, and is dead.
Rachel admits she has struggled with bouts of depression as she tried in vain to fill the hole for her family left after her mother's death.
I love her and I miss her, and my life is forever changed. My life will never be the same. And I went from really not knowing what real problems were, like real problems, to really experiencing real problems and real grief and real loneliness day in and day out. And I have to work twice as hard to, make sure I can be present in life. And it's hard. Some days you just want to be in bed all day. But I can't, because my kids don't want that, and I don't want that for them.
5 months after the collapse, it was Scarlett, of all people, who gave Rachel the reality check she needed.
Scarlett had a talk with me at one point and said, Mom, Grandma is fine. She is in the ground and she's okay, and you need to be happy. And that was a wake-up call to me that, I probably was moping around and depressed and devastated. And, I still feel that, and I really feel like I will feel that forever. And I came to a place where I realized I needed to function.
That loss was such a deep cut into the whole psyche of the family.
Rabbi Shalom Lipsker is the founder of the Shul of Bal Harbor, located in Surfside, just blocks from the collapse.
But because of the strength of the family, they were able to come together and not eliminate the pain. They were, every single time I talked to them during that period of time until after the burial, they would cry.
As the spiritual leader of the community, he knew many of those who died and was on the site within hours of the collapse.
This was something out of the ordinary. Nobody, you go to sleep at night in your own bed, in your own bedroom, safely hugging your child or your teddy bear or your husband or wife, because they found people holding hands, and you don't wake up. And the people around you don't understand. It's just a shock.
Today he leads one of the most influential Orthodox shuls in the country, and it became the rallying point to help survivors.
So we didn't come in saying, hey, believe in God and everything's going to be good. We said, what do you need? Do you need a jacket? Do you need a blanket? Do you need soda? Do you need a telephone? What do you need? Do you need somebody to talk to? That's all. It was a human contact of the highest level of kindness. We should definitely not wait for moments of tragedy to be able to evoke that kind of positivity and goodness and kindness. We should experience that every single day as we walk through the street and are able to help somebody. And at least it might give some reason that this tragedy would have had a purpose in itself. Because as a result of this tragedy, millions of people will start being better people. I'm not saying it's worth it, because it's not my role to say anything like that, but at least it will give them meaning.
While the collapse caused some families to question their beliefs, Rabbi Lipsker said he believes most turned even closer to God.
Nobody talked about hell or heaven and all that stuff. Just talked about eternity. And because it was based on kindness, it strengthened faith.
Nevertheless, some questions remain. What kind of a God takes a 5-year-old child like that?
And first of all, I don't know. If I knew, I would be. So I cannot answer for him. God is a big boy, he can answer for himself. We can't answer those questions, but we look at a continuity of history, and you see that if you follow in the pathway of God, whether you understand him or not, it works.
Perhaps the hardest part of the last year has been the questions each of these families ask themselves, but are often afraid to say out loud. Did my loved ones suffer? There were reports that some of the victims may have survived the initial collapse, only to die in the hours or days that followed. We only know for sure of one woman who survived the initial collapse, however.
Trying to save a lady, trapped inside. We'll see how it goes, man. Hopefully we get to her. We can hear her behind the walls, so we're digging her out.
That message fueled a new sense of horror for the families. Miami-Dade Fire recently identified the woman who was trapped as Teresa Velasquez, a 36-year-old music executive from Los Angeles who was visiting her parents, who also died. Ronit Nebrayev said that she was told when her son's body was recovered, he was holding his wallet, suggesting he had time to grab it. Off camera, she showed me pictures taken by the medical examiner. His body did not show signs of being crushed.
The day I showed up at the site, for me it was all over. I gave up. And I charge myself of that guilt every day, just because knowing that my son had his ID in his hand, he may have not died on impact. Even his gravestone, I put his birth date, which was 9/11/99, and his death date is June 2021 without a day, as in June 24th.
For the Langsfelds, they have their own set of questions.
Sometimes you lay down, you look at the roof and you say, what were my sister's last seconds like? Did she see the roof fall? It doesn't seem to be real.
But there is another, more troubling question that Martin asks himself.
A question I ask myself many times is, was she pregnant? It's an answer we'll never know. She was ready to start her life. She had her career on track.
Did she talk about wanting to start a family?
Yeah.
Martin said that he wondered if Nicole was pregnant when she died. Have you had that thought too?
Yes.
There were no autopsies performed, no way to know for sure. But the fact they asked themselves these questions is another degree of the pain they feel. We went with Martin recently to the collapse site. Martin told us he regularly comes here to feel closer to his sister.
I was out here almost every weekend before, and I come out here even though it's painful to see that I was on the 8th floor many times just looking over the beautiful ocean. I come here to connect now, and there's a very empty hole there. It's painful, but this is where my sister had all her last memories. This is exactly where she got married. This is where Louis asked her to marry her.
What should happen to this piece of land has been an ongoing debate among the families. Some wanted the land to become a memorial. For others, the land holds no meaning. Everyone, however, agrees there needs to be some acknowledgement of what happened here.
Right now, it's just an empty lot. Doesn't affect me. It does affect my children and my husband.
It's not that the land is holy or sacred as much as it is a matter of respect.
You go to a cemetery, those bodies are disintegrated. There's nothing there, but you go there out of respect. It's not necessarily just about my son, it's about the 98 families that lost somebody there, that we were lucky to receive Ilan's body in its entirety, almost intact. Others were not.
When we come back, trying to find meaning in tragedy.
When something like this happens to you, you realize that a lot doesn't matter. A lot of the things that you think or thought that mattered don't matter. So I gave up my apartment, I sold all my furniture, I donated nearly all of my clothes, and I packed a suitcase and I came here to do something that would feel fulfilling and more meaningful.
Amid all this pain, there are signs of hope. From the earliest days of the collapse, as firefighters searched through the rubble for their loved ones, the families began communicating with one another through a private social media account on WhatsApp.
Because of this tragic event, we have become a family. We've created a bond of trust, because that's the only other people we can trust. That's how we feel right now.
One universal language is pain and suffering. You know, there's something about that there is this connectedness, and one of the unique things for these survivors and family members is that this shared experience really brought them closer together.
There is also a desire to take this tragedy and create something meaningful out of all this senseless death. We've seen it before in this community, most recently after the Parkland shooting that left 17 people dead. That moment spurred a sense of activism around guns. In the months following the collapse, the fight over improving safety standards for buildings began in earnest. Martin Langesfeld took part in press conferences and testified in Tallahassee to pressure legislators to do something.
My name is Martin Langesfeld, and behind me in this empty hole, my beautiful sister Nikki and her husband Louis were crushed to death and were taken to a medical examiner 3 weeks later to identify a percentage of what was left to their bodies. A percentage.
Legislators failed to act during the regular session and did not pass any new laws. Some families blamed the governor.
Have you seen him on the news about Surfside, speaking about Surfside? I've heard him speak about many things. I have not heard him speak of Surfside.
Langsfeld said that he and other family members tried to meet with Governor DeSantis for months during the legislative session, but he refused to talk to them.
It's painful. No one here is really trying to start an argument with anyone. We're just trying to do the right thing and trying to prevent tragedies like this occurring again.
Because of the pressure they exerted, the legislature passed a measure during a special session improving safety standards for buildings across the state.
Nobody will be able to return my son. I just want to create the awareness that we pay with our son's life. So at least if it can have some good outcome of all of that, is to prevent this to happen again.
For Neil Handler, whose son Jonah was pulled from the rubble and is dealing with the emotional toll that experience placed on him, it becomes about providing the mental health counseling the first responders who saved his son may need.
Listen, I've been sober for 36 years, and for me, I learned a long time ago that when I am outwardly directed and I'm thinking about others and I'm trying to help others, I'm helping myself.
Do you find comfort in the Serenity prayer?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I do. I find more comfort in the St. Francis prayer these days. God, make me a channel of your peace. Where there's hatred, I may bring love. Where there is sadness, I may bring joy. It's through self-forgetting that we find, it's through forgiving that we are forgiven. That kind of stuff.
He has started a foundation, the Phoenix Life Project. The idea came to him after attending the Medal of Valor ceremony the fire department held for the first responders who rescued his son.
And it just clicked for me that we really need to help these guys. I mean, I looked at one of them in the eyes and it's like this catatonic stare. They're looking right through you because they're just so traumatized. Not everybody's got it. I've seen it in 3 or 4 people that I've met from Surfside. And I see it in Jonah every time it thunders.
He says even though the fire department offers counseling services to its firefighters, he knows many will not use it.
These guys are type A personalities. They're macho, they're tough guys. They don't want to appear, they don't want to talk about this stuff. And they certainly don't want to talk about it on the record, because if they go through their EAP and they get mental health services and they get diagnosed with a mental illness like PTSD or anything like that, they run the risk of having a desk job because they don't want them active in the field. They run the risk of losing and not qualifying for life insurance, which when I found that out, I just was like, you gotta be kidding me. The guys that are running into buildings, saving people's lives, they get traumatized, get help, and then they run the risk of not being able to qualify for their own life insurance. I just thought it was crazy.
Tali Nabreov also wanted to help people. Earlier this year, she moved to Africa. The move was both a retreat to a place where no one would know her, but it was also a place where she could be useful, helping small, mostly women-owned businesses succeed.
When something like this happens to you, you realize that a lot doesn't matter. A lot of the things that you think or thought that mattered don't matter. So I gave up my apartment, I sold all my furniture, I donated nearly all of my clothes, and I packed a suitcase and I came here to do something that would feel fulfilling and more meaningful.
Africa was also a chance for her to understand her roots. Her mother was born in Ethiopia.
There's a lot of struggle here, but the people are hopeful and they're happy and they are driven. And so in many ways it's refreshing to see, and it's a weird thing to find comfort in, but a lot of people living here have lost family members. It's very common with COVID and with other disease and things that happen here. People know what loss is, and that was something that I found strange comfort in.
There is a saying within Judaism that accompanies the loss of a loved one. May their memory be a blessing.
We believe in the eternity of the soul. That's the foundation of the community.
Holding on to a cherished memory not only benefits the family members, but according to the rabbi, also keeps the soul alive. Whether you believe that or not, the memories the Surfside families cherish provide them a sense of joy, no matter how fleeting it may be. It could be the memory of just walking together.
We were very affectionate with each other. Although we were married, together for 40 years, we'd walk down the street and we'd hold hands always, and we liked to dance.
They were great dancers.
Or it could be discovering something new about the loved one you lost.
Even to this day, I continue to learn about him. He made a record player. He woke up a friend at night and said, hey, you have to come, listen, I created with all these circuits. And he was passionate, and Everything he did, he loved. A friend of his called and said, oh, I have to drive up to, where was it, Carlos? For the horses?
Wellington.
I have to drive up to Wellington to go get a hat for the stables, etc. It was 1 in the morning, and my son said, let's go, I'll go with you. Those stories resonate with us.
Or you hold tight to the memory of a first kiss.
We met at 6 p.m. and when I noticed at 1 a.m. I was in a taxi and he gave me a kiss. And that's how everything started. And it was really, really surprising. I never saw it coming. And my first reaction was, Alfredo Leone, what are you doing?
Raquel Oliveira is flooded with memories of her short life with her husband Alfredo and their son Lorenzo.
We used to celebrate a lot. We celebrated everything. In our birthdays, I made up to Alfredo that in Brazil we celebrated the whole week. It was a lie. I am sure he knew it was a lie. But he loved the idea, and we would celebrate the whole week. My birthday, his birthday, Lorenzo's birthday. So that week of Alfredo's birthday, I just wanted to wake up every day and ask him what was his wish for the day, as we usually did. And I couldn't make any wish come true. It was really hard. And yesterday, well, there was Mother's Day, there was Valentine's Day, and yesterday was our anniversary. I am remembering the good memories from the past, so I attach to the good memories. I stick to them. I only have good memories. Actually, the only bad memory is that collapse. And to be very honest, since the collapse, I have never turned on the TV. I don't read things related to the collapse. I don't see pictures. I don't see videos. So all my memories are the good memories that we had.
On this most recent wedding anniversary, Raquel kept a promise her and Alfredo made to one another years ago.
I went to the Paul McCartney concert because we always spoke that we would love to go to his concert together. And it was exactly the day of our anniversary. So the day before yesterday, when I landed in Miami, I bought the tickets and I went.
Did you go with anyone?
No, I went by myself.
And how was it?
It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Did you feel him there with you?
All the time.
The families we spoke to wanted the public to understand the pain and grief they have felt. It's not easy hearing their stories, but this tragedy is now forever a part of our community, and so is their pain. Thank you for joining us. Good night.